get the volume pretty loud out there. I know you use that to prepare it. Does it go up any higher than that? And how important is it to be ready, especially for the noise at Kinnick?
Yeah, I don't think it goes up any higher. We had the one day that it blew the circuits, but no, it doesn't. I want it to be louder than it will be in a stadium, so I don't think it goes any louder. We got 2 different units. We got the one on the sideline, and then we got another one doing crowd noise out on the field. So obviously trying to get prepared for it so we can handle it like we did at Maryland and be comfortable and know what to expect.
You ever get tired of Phil Collins?
No, that's part of our, we're routine around here, and that's just part of our routine. I like Phil Collins anyway.
James, Iowa's known, you talked about how they're always consistent. They're known as a tough team more than anything. How do you build toughness, and is that something that you can teach somebody, or is it just something that they have in?
I think both. I think, obviously you try to identify that in the recruiting process. I think wrestling is a big part of that. I think, getting guys to play multiple sports, especially wrestling, I think helps. But yeah, I think you want to recruit that as much as you possibly can, but then I think there's parts that you're trying to ingrain that toughness in. It's how you go about your business. I think winter workouts are a big part of that. It's part of the reason why people would do it in the morning all the time, although sports scientists say it's not the right thing to do. There's some things you do that have nothing to do with them becoming better football players physically from a technique and fundamental standpoint. Doesn't make them faster. There's some things where you're just trying to create a mentality. I don't know if this generation of players always understands that, but there is an aspect that you do that, and that's to build that toughness. I think there's also aspects of that that shared, I don't know if suffrage is the right term to use or not, but shared suffrage that you go together, that you go through together. It kind of bonds the team as well. So there's some of that too. So yeah, I think it's obviously something that you want to attract and you want to recruit, but I do think it's a teachable trait, teachable skill to a degree.
James, how has Pat Fryermuth dealt with the extra attention he's kind of been seeing defensively, and what is the next step in his development moving forward?
Yeah, I think Bowers is doing a great job. I think there's also an aspect that Pat is getting attention, which is opening opportunities up for Bowers. I think it's the same way kind of throughout our offense, with wide receivers complementing each other, with tight ends complementing each other, with the run game complementing the pass game, so on and so forth. But he's doing a really nice job. We're very pleased with him. I think he's going to continue to make plays in the passing game. I think both of them are physical run game guys. I think they can be a little bit more. There's times where you see them being intimidating blockers and having a tremendous presence out there. I think they can do that a little bit more consistently. But no, I'm very pleased with where Pat's at and really where Bowers is at. I think we got a really good 1-2 punch right now.
James Styles is kind of having a moment. I think the last couple of games he's doubled his career totals before get to this point. How rewarding is it for you in today's day and age in college football for a guy to stick it out year 5 on campus and have this kind of payoff? Yeah,
and his ego's just exploded right now. I've been giving him a hard time, but he's been great. It is. I think it's really good for your program. I think it's really good for your heart and soul to see guys like that have done everything right, and whether it's things outside of their control, whether it's injuries, whether it's depth chart, whatever it is, to see a guy like that just kind of kept grinding, stayed positive, unbelievable support from his family. They're out here at practice all the time. So to see him really having an opportunity to make a more significant impact on the field. He's been making a big impact here really since he arrived here as a teammate, the type of guy he's been, but for it to translate onto the field is pretty cool.
What are the strategic keys to winning in the Big Ten consistently? Is that just personnel? Is it matchups, wrinkles? I mean, why have you been able to do it at this level?
Well, I think your point is a good one. I think we talk about it a lot in terms of winning traits and winning characteristics that have really stood the test of time. There's a lot of college football programs out there that are going to beat themselves. I think that's the first thing you have to do as a program is teach your program what those things are and how to avoid them. And then after that, it comes down to the programs that are left and how fundamentally sound they are. Is there a strategic advantage from a scheme standpoint? Yes. Is some weeks, is that magnified compared to others where you're just a better physical matchup for a certain opponent, or whether your scheme is a problem for that opponent? A lot of it is based on what offense and defense they run and what they see in practice every single day and what they're used to defending. I think that factors into it. And then obviously talent. There's a talent gap with some programs, and that factors into it as well. So it's kind of a combination of all those things every single week. But as we both know, you also see a lot of other things. You see talented teams that don't play up to the level they should. You see talented teams that are inconsistent and play really well one week and not the next, and that's where you hope your process helps with that. So it's kind of all that. You're taking all these different pieces and you're trying to come up with a formula that's best for you and your program week in and week out. And I think that's what Iowa has done a really good job. They figured out their formula there with Coach Ferentz and their program 20 years ago, and it hasn't wavered. And that's why they've been able to be so consistent.
How would you describe Sean Clifford's personality? Maybe even just away from football, do you think maybe people are trying
he's a fiery guy. He's a guy that has fun. Whether it's at practice, whether it's in meetings, he's got a maturity to him where he knows when's the appropriate time to have fun, when's the appropriate time to lock in and be serious and take notes. He's wired like the way you want a quarterback to be wired. Was raised extremely well from his parents. He was raised really well from a coaching perspective from his high school type of program he came from, winning program. I think that helps as well. I think his time in our program has been valuable on our strength staff and with the previous quarterbacks and all of that. I think he's a guy that has got good balance, if there is such a thing. In terms of when it's time to focus on school, being present, being where your feet are. When it's time to be in Lash or out here on the practice field to do that, and when he has an opportunity to go out with the guys and be one of the guys, and he does that too. So I think he's kind of in a good place right now and kind of finding his balance here at Penn State and when and what's appropriate.
Jeff, some of your players have spoken this week about the sports psychology aspect of things and kind of talking about all these resources that you guys have. Has that you guys always had as much of an emphasis on the psychology aspect of it as you do now, or is it?
I think it's like anything else. It's we've had it for the last couple of years, but I think it's like anything else. As you build trust with those people and build a rapport, not only with us to them, but also them understanding our team. Even the sports scientists, most of them are European. Most of them have an Olympic sports background. So like we had those guys, but for the first year, they didn't know football. So spending time with them and teaching them football, them getting an understanding of what our yearly calendar and schedule looks like. So now you could take all that data and make a recommendation because you understand. And it's the same way with the sports psychology stuff. It's building a relationship with them, how we do things, what we emphasize. Then you're able to get good feedback and it becomes valuable.
Jay, we're going to get Ricky Ronnie on the phone tomorrow. What sold you on him years back and over the course of your time together? What are some of the strengths you've seen him really develop that maybe weren't necessarily there initially?
Yeah, I think, for me, the most important ingredients is a guy who's smart, a guy who's hardworking, and a guy who cares about people. I mean, if you have those three things, everything else you can kind of work with. And I was fortunate to hire Ricky as a graduate assistant when I was the offensive coordinator, and he did such a good job that if I remember correctly, we bumped him up to full time that next year. And Kevin Threlkill, who's been with me ever since then. Kevin was Ricky's student assistant mean, being there till 3 o'clock in the morning, breaking down the film together. So we've been together for a while, but Ricky's one of those guys, whatever job you gave him to do, he did it and did it extremely well. And then obviously, when I got the Vanderbilt job, hired him as my quarterbacks coach and did a really good job with that role. So he was a guy that I kind of always viewed as a possible coordinator one day, but the timing had to be right. And he needed to be ready, and it just needed to make sense from a lot of different perspectives. So, I believed in Ricky, for a long time. It just needed to be the right time, and the right opportunity presented itself. We were in a good place. We wanted to keep the offense similar, and those types of things. I thought it was the right thing to do for Trace as well, so he didn't have to learn a new offense and a new offensive coordinator. So there's just a lot of reasons why it made sense. But to me, ultimately, at the end of the day, a good person who cares about people, hardworking, and smart. And I want to surround myself with as many of those people as I possibly can. And I think probably the other thing I would say is people that love football. People that can't live without it. Ricky's one of those people. He loves the game, and I think the more people you can fill your locker room like that, and the more people you can have in your program like that, the better you're going to be.
James, how valuable is it when I was coming off playing an opponent that has an offense that's very similar to yours? Do you get a lot more out of that tape than ordinary tape? Or is it... Yeah,
I think whenever you're breaking down an opponent, you want to break down similar type teams. I think they also played Mississippi State, in a bowl game. So those types of games where whether it's the same offense or whether it's a spread offense or similar. I mean, obviously, if they played Army or Navy last week, you're not even going to use that game. You throw it out and you just go to, because it's useless for us. So that's what you're trying to do defensively. You're trying to break down what are the 4 most recent games that ran a similar defense to us? What are the 4 most recent games that are the most valuable that ran a similar offense to us? And you try to use those. Obviously, as the season goes on, you got more flexibility to do that.